Elizabeth Warren's main talking points of her life story are crumbling around her. The NBA is showing that its woke culture takes a backseat to money and power, and the infamous impeachment whistleblower, who Adam Schiff just loves so much, appears to have a history of working with Democrats. All that and more. I'm Bobby Eberle. This is a 13-minute news hour.
And God bless the United States of America.
All right, friends, welcome to the show. Happy Wednesday. We're going to jump in. We've got Elizabeth Warren. We've got a lot of stuff to cover, but I want to start first with the NBA because the NBA is trying to be the woke sporting league. You know, they've got left-wing NBA owners blasting President Trump. You've got the owners having meetings saying that they're not going to call themselves owners anymore because that might be offensive to some people. And then you've got the NBA threatening boycotts in North Carolina because of conservative legislation. All sorts of stuff like that. Well, it's just so funny that this week we see that the true colors are coming out and this NBA woke culture takes a back seat to money and power. They just kind of put their social justice warrior status on the back burner when it comes to something like China. Here's a report from the Daily Caller. It says, over the weekend, Houston Rockets general manager Daryl Morey sent out what would seem to the average person to be a pretty innocuous tweet. Fight for freedom. Stand with Hong Kong. But China didn't like Morey's tweet. Presumably acting upon the demands of the Chinese government, Chinese businesses began pulling their NBA sponsorships, and Chinese broadcasters and streaming platforms threatened to stop airing NBA games altogether. So, an NBA executive tweets out support for pro-democracy Hong Kong. China doesn't like it? NBA caves. Here's more of the story. The NBA acted quickly, issuing one statement in English apologizing to China for Morey's regrettable statement and one statement translated into Mandarin, which articulated something entirely different, according to ABC News, that the NBA was extremely disappointed with Morey's inappropriate tweet and severely hurt the feelings of Chinese fans. Two of Morey's best players on the Houston Rockets, James Harden and Russell Westbrook, also came out and publicly apologized, insisting, "We love China." As we are now seeing, it's much easier to jump aboard the crowded progressive bandwagon, criticize token conservative laws, and bravely face the applause of American elites than it is to face down a tyrannical Chinese regime when significant money is on the line. But while the NBA's rapid capitulation this weekend in the face of Chinese pressure was discouraging, it was also a helpful reminder of the league's true priorities. No matter what actions the NBA may take here in the U.S. to promote various issues, one can be sure their first concern is what it has always been, dollars and cents. And for just a little reminder of how things are going in China, the Trump administration actually had to get involved. And here's a report from the Associated Press. The Trump administration is blocking shipments from a Chinese company making baby pajamas sold at Costco warehouses after the foreign manufacturer was accused of forcing ethnic minorities locked in an internment camp to sew clothes against their will. So, AOC, that's a real internment camp. That's what's going on in China right there. And someone tweets support for Hong Kong, pro-democracy Hong Kong. Democracy is something that Americans espouse, whether you're an executive, whether you're a worker, whether you're a student, whatever. That's supposed to be one of our core values. The NBA caves because of pressure from China. So, all right, now we're going to talk about Elizabeth Warren because on the campaign trail, all through her political career, she's gotten a lot of mileage out of a few certain life stories, life narratives. And those main ones are crumbling around her. Of course, we had the whole Cherokee Indian thing where she said this was part of her heritage and how she had to fight, against oppression and things like that for this heritage, which it turns out she's 1024th Cherokee, which means nothing, which means basically anybody in the United States has that kind of small DNA. So that story just crumbled. But there's another one. There's another big narrative that she always used, and that is in speech after speech, she'd talk about how coming up as a teacher in the 1970s, how she was fired from her job for being pregnant because that's just how things were back then. Here's a clip from earlier this year in April where she's saying the same thing.
Teaching special needs kids is a calling, but I finished the first year visibly pregnant. And back in those days, it meant you didn't get invited back. That's how it was.
All right, there's just one problem with this story. It doesn't appear that the events went down that way, okay? There is a 2007 video that has surfaced now that shows Elizabeth Warren talking about this year, this teaching year, and that she was taking education classes, and those just didn't work out for her, so she quit. It's a totally different narrative, and here's a clip from that interview.
Then that summer, I actually didn't have the education courses, so I was on an emergency certificate, it was called. And I went back to graduate school and took a couple of courses in education and said, I don't think this is going to work out for me. And I was pregnant with my first baby. So I had a baby and stayed home for a couple of years.
So see, that sure doesn't sound like she was fired. Again, she worked for a year, and then as that clip said, she took some classes, it wasn't working out for her, so she moved on with her life. Quite a bit different than actually getting fired. Then, the Washington Free Beacon did some research, and they dug up school board rulings, school board votes, where they actually extended her contract. It shows that she wasn't fired. Her contract was actually extended for another year. And here's that report from the Washington Free Beacon. The Riverdale Board of Education approved a second-year teaching contract for a young Elizabeth Warren, documents show, contradicting the Democrat presidential candidate's repeated claims that she was asked not to return to teaching after a single year because she was visibly pregnant. Minutes of the April 21st, 1971 Riverdale Board of Education meeting obtained by the Washington Free Beacon show that the board voted unanimously on a motion to extend Warren a second-year contract for a 2 days per week teaching job. That job is similar to the one she held the previous year, her first year of teaching. Minutes from the board meeting held 2 months later, on June 16, 1971, indicate that Warren's resignation was accepted with regret. Well, guess what? She's sticking with the story. So just the other day, she was asked about this whole incident, and here's what she said. When I was 22 and finishing my first year of teaching, I had an experience millions of women will recognize. By June, I was visibly pregnant, and the principal told me that the job I'd already been promised for next year would go to someone else. So fired for being pregnant. That's what she tweeted. And then she added this part. She said, this was 1971, years before Congress outlawed pregnancy discrimination. But we know it still happens in subtle and not so subtle ways. We can fight back by telling our stories. I tell mine on the campaign trail, and I hope to hear yours. So she's still at it. She's still telling her story, just like she told her Cherokee Indian story over and over and over again. And she's still sticking with it. You saw the tweets. She talked to CBS News, and here's what she said about that.
I was 6 months pregnant. It was my first job. I was 22 years old. And the job that was mine, that I'd been hired for the next year, was taken away when they knew I was pregnant.
So come on. So from Cherokee Indian to fired pregnant teacher, her two main narratives for her whole political career are crumbling. None of them is supported by actual evidence that those ever happened. Of course, her DNA test shows that she's not Cherokee at all. And now these school board minutes, her own video interviews, are blasting her other story. So typical politics from Elizabeth Warren, and she's emerging as the Democrat frontrunner. Next, I want to give you a little update on the whistleblower. The whistleblower that's led to this, that Adam Schiff has embraced, that's led to this impeachment inquiry in the House of Representatives. This is the guy that said has no firsthand knowledge of these events, that met with Adam Schiff prior to filing the complaint. And this is supposed to be just this good old man or woman trying to do their job. Well, guess what? It turns out there's a lot more to this whistleblower, including ties with the Democrats. And here's a report from the Washington Examiner. It says, in an August 26 letter, the intelligence community's Inspector General, Michael Atkinson, wrote that the anonymous whistleblower who set off the Trump-Ukraine impeachment fight showed some indications of an arguable political bias in favor of a rival political candidate. A few weeks later, news reports said that the whistleblower's possible bias was that he was a registered Democrat. That was all. Incredulous commentary suggested that Republicans who were pushing the bias talking point were so blinded by their partisanship that they saw simple registration with the Democrat Party as evidence of wrongdoing. Okay, so that's what first came out, that he was registered Democrat, all right? And again, Republicans were mad at even then because, I mean, of course as a Democrat, you know, they're always on the left, these people that are coming out. But, you know, they were blasted, these people coming out saying, oh, there's no story there. Well, guess what? There's actually more. Here's more from the Washington Examiner. Now, however, there's word of more evidence of possible bias on the whistleblower's part. Under questioning from Republicans during last Friday's impeachment inquiry interview with Atkinson, the Inspector General revealed that the whistleblower's possible bias was not that he was simply a registered Democrat, but that he had a significant tie to one of the Democratic presidential candidates currently vying to challenge President Trump in next year's election. The IG said the whistleblower worked or had some type of professional relationship with one of the Democrat candidates, said one of the persons with knowledge that was said. Okay, so this is a Democrat operative working with one of the current Democrat presidential candidates. This is the whistleblower. This is the person, again, with no firsthand knowledge of the complaint and who the system was changed so that this secondhand knowledge could actually be a formal complaint. It's just, this is what happens again when you take on the deep state. So finally, I want to just update you on Operation Varsity Blues, the college admissions scandal. I followed this story a lot because it just burns me up when people have to cheat the system, all right? If you're smart enough, you can get ahead. If you work hard enough, you can get ahead. And yet these rich and powerful are cheating the system to try and get their kids into various colleges through bribes and other types of illegal activity. And it's really interesting because when all these parents were charged, you immediately had a break. You had people on one side that pled guilty and people on the other side that says, no, we're going to fight it. So the sentences are starting to come down for the people that pled guilty. One of the first ones was Felicity Huffman from the show Desperate Housewives. She was charged with paying $15,000 to have her daughter's SAT altered, the score altered. And she was sentenced to 2 weeks in jail, federal prison, $30,000 fine, 250 hours of community service. And now more people have been charged. The latest one, the couple paid $30,000 to have test scores altered. Their sentence is a month in federal prison each and $45,000 each in fines and 250 hours of community service. So these are the people that pled guilty. And what's so amazing about this story is that you have the big ones still to come. If everyone so far who pled guilty is getting jail time, what's going to happen to especially Lori Loughlin from Full House, who her and her fashion designer husband paid $500,000 so that their daughters could go to USC by pretending they rode crew. They tried to fake them as athletes, even sending in videos of them on rowing machines when they weren't rowers, when they weren't athletes. And so those trials are still to come, but every person that's pled guilty so far has gotten some jail time. So we'll see what happens with the rest of them. Folks, that's our show for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Please subscribe, and when you do, please hit that bell so you'll be notified, and we'll see you next time. I'm Bobby Eberly. This is a 13-Minute News Hour. Okay, friends, just a little reminder before you go, and no, this does not count against my 13 minutes. Please hit the subscribe button below and tell your friends. And if you happen to miss our last show, you can check it out right here. And also for great conservative news and commentary, please check out GOPUSA.com. All right, folks, we'll see you on the next show. Have a great day.